it says, "Speak to the children of Israel, saying, in the 7th month, on the first day of the month, a set-apart day, a Sabbath, shall be to you, a memorial acclamation of the resounding of the shofar, a set-apart gathering." It's talking about Yom Teruah, Rosh Hashanah. So, Torah says that it's to be held on the first day of the 7th month. And if we're going to keep Torah, if we say we're keeping Torah, then we need to consider, I know we talked about having Rosh Hashanah on Saturday, but that's not the first day of the 7th month. So we need to say, let's do it Sunday, and you know, if we do it from 4 to 7, so that we're not too late, everybody. It gives us 3 hours, and we still
won't be flying back, right?
The mikvahs, you know, the mikvahs there, and we can. We're going to do Yom Teruah, the whole shebang this year, the way that it should be done.
Okay.
So there's actually, you know, in Passover we have the Seder, and within Yom Teruah we have set things that we do as well. We haven't really practiced them in the past. We just show up and we have a gathering and a little teaching, and we have a mikvah. But you know, if we're going to say that we're keeping Torah, then let's do it according to Torah.
So what are
So
you
what is
to
that?
do? Yeah. What do you need to do?
Well, I mean, there's certain things, the way the shofar is blasted, the liturgy that goes along with the shofar, that the scripture's read, and then the shofar blasts, and then the scripture is read, then the shofar blasts again, and there's a conversation taking place at the mount when the Torah was giving it Shavuot. This is when the shofar sounded. And we're remembering this. But there was a conversation between Moses, who spoke, and Elohim, who answered by the voice of the shofar. So we actually replay this in the midst of our, I guess, liturgy, starting the ceremony kind of part of it. And it's kind of a cool thing, you know. But I've been thinking about it quite a bit over the last week, but I know that we had talked about Saturday, and it was mostly for convenience sake, but it's time to start wondering, or actually it's time to start thinking that it's not our convenience, it's what does Torah say, and if Torah says it, then we have to do it according to Torah.
Well, actually, I don't think it was any convenience sake. We said it was Sunday, and Sunday began on Saturday night, so it's really Monday and begins on Sunday nights.
Yeah, so Sunday evening would actually be when Yom Teruah would start. So we go from afternoon into the evening, and then we've kept the mitzvah. All right, so
What
we
was
read
that scripture again?
it's
Yeah,
it's Vayikra 23, verse 24, and it's actually it's in the body of tonight's lesson as well.
Okay.
I just wanted to bring that out. But all right, so let's talk to our Elohim, and then we'll jump into our lesson. Yahuwah Elohim, we thank you for this opportunity to study your word. We ask that you'll open our eyes, open our ears, open our hearts, so that we can hear, see, and understand what your word has to tell us. And we thank you for it and everything you do. In the name of Yahshua, amen. All right, so this is Matthew 24, part 3. Thank you, Doreen. Considering 1 Thessalonians 4, call it deliverance and restoration. Last week we talked about redemption. So the main point in our last study was that the perception of Torah must and will increase. But we didn't consider one word that was found in Matthew 24:30 that's of a lot of importance. The word in Aramaic is anane, meaning clouds. And it's found in the phrase anane shemaya that we read here in this verse 30 of Matthew 24. It's not on here, but if you look at your last week's notes, see it. So we discovered that Shemaya meant heavens, and this is the realm of Elohim. And that the root of this word is Shema, meaning to hear, perceive, discern, understand, apply, and obey. In this word we considered that we are to perceive and understand that which comes from the realm of Yahweh Elohim, and then apply it to our lives in obedience to it. Okay? And this is why, if Torah says it, it comes from the realm of Elohim. Therefore, we have to understand what it says and then apply it and be obedient to it and then apply it to our lives. The word ananai brings a little bit more clarity to this as to what to understand. And if we look at the letters that make this word up, we say that ananai is ayin, then nun, and then yod in Aramaic. That in this we see that it's to perceive life in the truth, power, and ability of Elohim. So, we have two nuns in the middle. We understand that nun represents life. The first time we see this word as a root in Torah is in the word nefashim, which is talking about the life swimming around the waters. But it's also the root of the word nefesh, which means soul. So it affects us spiritually and physically, is this perception. Now, we could say that, but we have to look at ananai from another point of view as well, that the first time that we find the word for clouds in Torah is in the word anan, in Bereshit 9:13, that says, I have set my bow in the cloud, and it shall be for a token of a covenant between me and the earth. I have set my bow in the cloud, and it will be for a token between me and the earth. The word be'anan means in the clouds. Now we've said anan, just like its Aramaic counterpart, means clouds, but it comes from a similar root that means to appear and to cover. Okay? To appear and to cover. There's one idea that we have in this word. Now, we find that in the clouds is kasheti, that means a bow. Okay? Now, we all have this picture of this beautiful rainbow. This is the covenant. There's a rainbow. This word kasheti can mean rainbow, but primarily it means a bow that shoots an arrow. Okay? A bow that shoots an arrow. And if we keep that in mind, and we understand that the root of Torah is the word yara, that means to shoot the arrow, then what then is the token of the covenant here? Is it a pretty little rainbow? Or is it the instruction of Yahweh Elohim that will serve as a reminder to both humankind and Yahweh Elohim? Is it His Torah that we have to have perception of with our life, our very soul? That we have to perceive His truth, power, and ability in everything. So that was a very important thing for us to understand, that the Torah appeared to cover humankind and bring forth a covenant of the promise of redemption, deliverance, and restoration. So if we add this in to the main idea of our study from last week, we're reminded that we are to pay close attention to Torah as it contains our redemption, deliverance, and restoration. Okay? That's one point that we kind of missed last week, so we can add this in as an addendum to last week's notes. But something else that I don't think was very clear last week, and Mickey brought up a good point about last week's note says that Rosh Hashanah is a representation of the giving of the Torah, and Mickey brought up the subject that, well, don't we consider Shavuot as the time that the Torah was given? And we have the counting of the Omer, 50 days between Passover and Shavuot, which tells us that this was the time that the Torah was given. So how can we say that Rosh Hashanah also represents the giving of the Torah? So a second point from our last study that needs to be clarified, as it's very important that we have an understanding of it, are the comments made about Rosh Hashanah and the giving of the Torah. This holiday of Rosh Hashanah we have come to erroneously equate with the New Year. Okay? This is rabbinical takanot. It's not found in Torah. It comes from the Talmud. Okay? First of all, it's important, firstly, that in violation of the commandment of not adding or taking away from the Torah, the rabbis disregarded the intent of Yom Teruah, which is the word that we find in Torah. It means day of remembrance, specifically day to remember the sounding of the shofar. Okay? They called it Rosh Hashanah and they attributed it to being the head of the year. This may coincide with the rabbinical civil calendar. The civil calendar, Rosh Hashanah, is the first month. In the sacred calendar that we find in Torah, it's the 7th month. Okay? This is why we can say that Yahshua was born at Sukkot, because it's the first month of the civil calendar. They would have taken his name and whatever, and they would have put it in the record, so to speak, the civil calendar, and that he would have died at Pesach, and they would have written his name as the 7th month in the civil year, which would have been Passover. But that's not the case in the sacred calendar. The head of the year, according to Torah, is Passover. It's in the first month of the sacred calendar. So, now, let's see, where were we? Okay. We got that. The very name Rosh Hashanah is not found in Torah. It is a rabbinical decree. Now, this being said, we still use the word Rosh Hashanah because we understand what Rosh Hashanah is, but it's actually Yom Teruah. And on Yom Teruah, we're commanded to remember the voice of the shofar. Okay? This is Vayikra 23:24 and Bamidbar 29:1 gives references to these things. We do it in remembrance of the first time that the shofar was heard, which was at the foot of Mount Sinai, when Yahweh Elohim said that the people would be his special treasure, a kingdom of Kohanim, a people set apart. It is here that the children of Israel said, all that Yahweh Elohim has said, that we will do. And this is in Shemot 19. The Torah was given 50 days after Passover on the day that we come to know as Shavuot. This is a passive thing. The children of Israel didn't have to do anything in hearing the Ten Commandments being given. Yom Teruah is an active thing in that we accept the Ten Commandments as being given, and that in this we promise, or the children of Israel promised, to keep the commandments on the day that the shofar blew from heaven. This is the importance of Yom Teruah. Therefore, it's not Rosh Hashanah that we should equate with this verse in Matthew, as it's a celebration actually created by the rabbis, but rather the Torah decreed festival of Yom Teruah, which is in Vayikra 23:24, that commands us to remember the blowing of the shofar that reminds us of the oath to keep Torah that was made by those that heard it. When the shofar blasts at the coming of the Son of Man, we must remember that we made a promise to keep the Ten Commandments, the Torah and the commandments of Yahweh Elohim. We say today, we've made a promise to keep the Torah and the Ten Commandments of Elohim. This is why in our last study, we equated the giving of Torah to Rosh Hashanah as opposed to Shavuot. So, we understand, Shavuot, the Torah was given. At the same time, the shofar blew. And it was at this time that we said everything that Yahweh Elohim has said, that we will do. And this is why we pay heed, we listen to the voice of Elohim in the shofar. And this is why we keep Yom Teruah. Okay? And this is why when this verse in Matthew appears, the shofar sounds. It's telling us, hey, you remember that promise that you made? This is a good time to start keeping it because something really, really bizarre is fixing to happen. Okay? All right, so with that in mind, we can consider our verses in 1 Thessalonians. Now, I know last week's study was rather lengthy, and you have the notes to review them. If you didn't catch a whole lot of what we talked about last week, and I know it was long and hard to catch, but a little bit of that hopefully sunk in to where this will make sense. Okay? Our first verse says, "For if we believe that Yahshua died and arose, so also Aloha, those who have slept in Yahshua, will bring with him." Okay, Aloha is the Aramaic word for Elohim. This was written during a period of severe persecution of the Netzarim assembly in Thessalonica. This verse also tells us specifically that those who have the seal of Elohim on their heads that are killed by human violence during the tribulation will rise again by the power of Yahshua, the restoration of Yahweh. But note that it is Elohim who will bring them with him. And we'll get more insight in the next verse. Okay? We can look at these topically based on what we learned last week and begin to understand. We know that there's going to be a tremendous tribulation. We know that 144,000, if we say that that is a very small amount compared to 3.3 billion Christians or 13 million Jews, we understand that's a small amount. But these people are sealed from the harm that comes from the wrath of Elohim, but they're not necessarily protected from the wrath of humankind. Okay? And people will die. Right? So we go to the next verse. It's verse 15 that says, "But this we say to you by the word of our Master, that we who may be remaining at the coming of our Master, we who then may live, will not precede those who have slept." Okay? Will not precede those who have slept. The living will not precede those who have slept. Many will survive this period of tribulation, but Paul makes it clear that those who have kept Torah and built a relationship in the Spirit and truth prior to it and have died, and those with the seal of Yahweh Elohim killed during the tribulation will rise first and then be joined by the living. Not to join the living, but then be joined by the living. Okay? This is done by the word of the Master. The Aramaic word that is used here is Amar Yinan. Amar Yinan. The root of this word is Maryah. It means Master Yahweh. And the word of Maryah is Yahshua, meaning the redemption, deliverance, and restoration of Yahweh, found in his Torah. So who is going to do this? The Master, Maryah. This is Master Yahweh who is going to actually be doing this. It's a tremendous thing that our Elohim is actually going to take an active role in this. We all say, Yeshua, Yeshua, Jesus this, Jesus that. But we don't understand that we have a Yahweh who is Elohim. That Yeshua is the restoration the deliverance that comes from Yah.